the breakthrough. In the heart of the New York Institute of Quantum Mechanics, the air crackled with anticipation. Dr. Evelyn Harper, a brilliant physicist with an insatiable curiosity, stared intently at the array of monitors displaying complex data streams. Her team had been working tirelessly for years, chasing a theory that many had dismissed as science fiction. But now, the impossible seemed within reach. The room was dimly lit, the soft hum of the quantum computer filling the silence. Dr. Harper's colleagues, Dr. Michael Graves and Dr. Cheng, stood nearby, equally absorbed in the data. They had developed a device capable of creating a stable portal between parallel universes, a quantum gateway that could tear through the very fabric of reality. "We're on the brink, Evelyn," Michael whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "If these readings are correct, we've done it." Evelyn nodded, her eyes never leaving the screen. The implications of their work were staggering. The theory of parallel worlds had been around for decades, but no one had ever found concrete evidence until now. The gateway was their proof, their window into another version of Earth. With a deep breath, Evelyn adjusted the controls and initiated the final sequence. The machine roared to life, and a shimmering rift appeared in the center of the lab. It was a portal, a doorway to another world. "We're ready," Lee said, his voice steady. "Let's take the first step." Together, the three scientists stepped through the portal. Chapter 2: A World Apart. As the disorientation subsided, the team found themselves standing in the middle of a vast city. But it wasn't New York, at least not the New York they knew. The skyline was both familiar and alien, with towering structures made of materials that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Strange vehicles hovered silently above the ground, and people moved about with an air of calm efficiency. "Where are we?" Michael asked, his voice barely a whisper. "This is Earth," Evelyn replied, her voice filled with wonder. "But it's not our Earth." The world they had stepped into was a mirror of their own, but with one crucial difference. History had taken a divergent path. Here, technological advancements had progressed at an accelerated rate, but at the cost of something deeply human. As they explored the city, they noticed that there was an eerie uniformity to everything. The people were almost identical in appearance, their faces devoid of emotion. They spoke in a monotone, their movements precise and mechanical. "I don't like this," Lee muttered. "It's too perfect." Evelyn agreed. This world was technologically advanced beyond their wildest dreams, but it felt hollow, devoid of the chaos and creativity that defined humanity on their Earth. They soon discovered that this Earth had experienced a different series of historical events. A global catastrophe in the early 20th century had led to the rise of a single, authoritarian government that prioritized order and efficiency above all else. The individuality of its citizens had been sacrificed in the name of progress, resulting in a society where everyone was a cog in the machine. How could they live like this? Michael wondered aloud as they walked through the city's immaculate streets. "They don't know any other way," Evelyn replied. "Their history was shaped by fear, and this is the result." The scientists continued their exploration, determined to learn more about this parallel Earth. They visited libraries, archives, and spoke to the locals, piecing together the story of this world. It was a tale of survival, but at a great cost. As they delved deeper, they uncovered disturbing truths about the government that ruled this world. Dissent was not tolerated, and those who questioned the status quo were swiftly dealt with. It was a world where freedom was an illusion, and conformity was the highest virtue. Chapter 3: The Choice. The team knew they couldn't stay in this world for long. The portal back to their Earth was unstable, and they had to return before it closed. But the more they learned about this world, the more they felt compelled to do something about it. "We can't just leave these people like this," Evelyn said one evening as they huddled in their makeshift base. "They deserve to know that there's another way to live." "But what can we do?"
Lee asked.
"We're just three scientists. We can't change an entire world." "Maybe not," Michael said, his eyes gleaming with a sudden idea. "But we can show them that there's a different path." The team devised a plan. They would use their technology to broadcast a message to the entire world, revealing the existence of the multiverse and showing the people of this Earth what life was like on other parallel worlds, worlds where freedom and creativity flourished. It was a risky move, one that could have catastrophic consequences. But the scientists knew they had to try. They couldn't just walk away. The night of the broadcast, they hacked into the global communication network and sent their message. It was a simple video, showing images of different Earths, each with its own unique history and culture. The message was clear. There was more to life than what the people of this world had been taught. As the video played across screens in every home, workplace, and public space, the scientists held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The people of this Earth, who had been conditioned to accept their fate, were suddenly confronted with a new reality. They saw the possibilities of a different life, and for the first time, they began to question the world they lived in. Protests erupted across the city as people demanded change. The government, unprepared for such a widespread uprising, struggled to maintain control. But the seeds of rebellion had been sown, and there was no turning back. The scientists knew they couldn't stay to see the outcome of their actions. The portal back to their Earth was weakening, and they had to return before it was too late. But as they prepared to leave, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. "We're leaving them in chaos," she said softly. "Sometimes chaos is necessary," Michael replied. "It's the only way for them to break free." With heavy hearts, they stepped back through the portal, returning to their own world. The laboratory was just as they had left it, but they knew that everything had changed. Chapter 5: A New Beginning. Back on their Earth, the scientists were hailed as heroes. Their discovery of the multiverse had opened up new possibilities for humanity, and their actions had sparked a global conversation about the nature of freedom and control. But Evelyn, Michael, and Lee knew that their work was far from over. They had seen what could happen when fear dictated the course of history, and they were determined to ensure that their own world didn't fall into the same trap. As they resumed their research, they kept a close eye on the parallel Earth they had visited. The world was in turmoil, but there were signs of hope. The people had tasted freedom, and they were fighting for it with everything they had. In the end, the scientists knew that they couldn't change the course of history for every parallel Earth. But they could offer a glimpse of what was possible, and that was enough. As they continued their work, they remained hopeful that one day, all the parallel worlds would find their own path to freedom, just as they had. Chapter 6: Ripples in the Multiverse. Several weeks had passed since their return, but the events on the parallel Earth haunted Evelyn, Michael, and Lee. The chaos they had ignited was just the beginning, and the fate of that world was uncertain. But their work had gained international attention, and soon, the New York Institute of Quantum Mechanics became the epicenter of multiverse research. Scientists from around the globe flocked to collaborate with them, eager to explore new realities. The team expanded, and with increased resources, they refined their quantum gateway, making it more stable and precise. Yet, as they made progress, the moral implications of their actions weighed heavily on them. Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they had interfered with a world they barely understood. "Are we playing God?" she asked Michael one evening as they worked late in the lab. Michael looked up from his calculations, considering her words. "We've opened a door to something bigger than any of us could have imagined. But it's not about playing God. It's about understanding what's out there and learning from it." "But what if we do more harm than good?" Evelyn persisted. "We could be creating ripples across the multiverse that we can't control." Lee, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. "Every action has consequences, Evelyn. We knew that when we started this. But I believe that knowledge is worth the risk. We can't turn back now." Evelyn nodded, but the unease remained. She couldn't help but wonder what other worlds might be out there, worlds where a single decision had changed the course of history in unimaginable ways. Chapter 7: A World of Shadows. Their next journey took them to a world shrouded in perpetual twilight, where the sun never fully rose above the horizon. The air was thick with fog, and the cities were eerily silent, with dark, twisted architecture that seemed to defy the laws of nature. As they stepped through the portal, the team immediately sensed something was wrong. The atmosphere was oppressive, heavy with a sense of dread that permeated everything. The people they encountered were fearful, their eyes darting nervously as if expecting danger at every turn. "What happened here?" Michael whispered as they walked through the shadowy streets. They soon learned that this Earth had faced a catastrophe of a different kind, a series of volcanic eruptions and meteor impacts that had plunged the world into darkness. In the ensuing chaos, a powerful religious cult had risen to power, preaching that the darkness was a divine punishment and that only through strict obedience could humanity be saved. The cult's influence was absolute, and dissent was ruthlessly crushed. The people lived in fear, their lives dictated by a rigid hierarchy that left no room for individual thought or freedom. It was a world where hope had been extinguished, and survival was the only goal. Evelyn, Michael, and Lee were horrified by what they saw. But they also realized that this world's fate had been sealed long before they arrived. Unlike the previous world, there was no easy solution, no message they could broadcast to inspire change. "We can't fix this," Lee said grimly as they gathered in a deserted building. "This world is too far gone." "We have to try," Evelyn argued. "We can't just leave them to suffer like this." "But what can we do?" Michael asked, frustration evident in his voice. "This isn't something we can fight with technology or ideas. The darkness is real, and it's consuming everything." As they debated, they were discovered by the cult's enforcers, a group of heavily armed and fanatical followers. The scientists were captured and brought before the cult leader, a figure cloaked in shadow who radiated an aura of malevolence. "You do not belong here," the leader hissed, his voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "You bring false hope, and that is a crime in our world." Evelyn stood her ground, her mind racing for a way out. "We're not here to bring hope," she said carefully. "We're here to learn, to understand why your world is the way it is." The leader regarded her with cold, unblinking eyes. "There is nothing to understand. This is our fate, and we have accepted it. You will do the same, or you will perish." With no other options, the team was forced to comply. They were confined to a small, dimly lit cell, their equipment confiscated. Days turned into weeks as they languished in captivity, each of them struggling with the weight of their failure. But Evelyn refused to give up. She knew that they couldn't stay in this world forever. The portal would eventually close, and they would be trapped. She began to devise a plan to escape, using the limited resources they had left. Chapter 8: The Escape. One night, as the cultists conducted their nightly rituals, Evelyn, Michael, and Lee made their move. Using a makeshift device crafted from the remnants of their equipment, they managed to overpower their guards and flee into the labyrinthine city. The darkness pressed in on them from all sides as they raced through the streets, the distant sound of chanting echoing in their ears. They knew they had little time before the cultists discovered their escape and hunted them down. "We need to get back to the portal," Evelyn urged, her voice tight with urgency. "But where is it?" Michael asked, glancing around at the unfamiliar surroundings. Lee pulled out a small compass-like device they had used to track their location when they first arrived. "This way," he said, pointing toward the outskirts of the city. As they ran, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to close in around them, the darkness growing thicker, almost tangible. It was as if the very world was trying to swallow them whole. Finally, they reached the portal, which flickered weakly, its energy fading. They could hear the cultists closing in, their shouts growing louder. "We have to go, now," Evelyn shouted, pushing Michael and Lee toward the portal. One by one, they stepped through, just as the cultists burst into the clearing. The last thing Evelyn saw before the portal closed was the shadowy figure of the cult leader, his eyes burning with hatred. As they tumbled back into their own world, the lab was filled with light and warmth, a stark contrast to the darkness they had just escaped. The team collapsed on the floor, exhausted but alive. For a long moment, none of them spoke, each lost in their thoughts. They had narrowly escaped with their lives, but the experience had left a deep scar. "We need to be more careful," Lee finally said, his voice hoarse. "We can't just go into these worlds blind. We have to know what we're dealing with." Evelyn nodded, her resolve hardening. You're right, but we can't stop. There's so much more out there, and we have a responsibility to learn from it. Chapter 9. The Turning Point. The escape from the shadowy Earth marked a turning point for the team. They had witnessed firsthand the dangers of meddling in worlds they didn't fully understand. But it had also reinforced their belief that their work was important, even vital. The multiverse held untold secrets, and they were determined to uncover them, no matter the risks. They began to develop stricter protocols for exploring parallel worlds, gathering as much information as possible before making any direct contact. They also started working on improving the quantum gateway, adding safety features to ensure they could return home in an emergency. But as their work continued, they couldn't ignore the growing tension within their own world. The discovery of the multiverse had sparked both awe and fear among the global population. Governments and corporations scrambled to exploit the new knowledge, while religious groups condemned it as heresy. Protests and debates raged, with some demanding that the technology be destroyed, while others argued that it was the key to humanity's future. Evelyn, Michael, and Leaf found themselves at the center of the storm. Their every move was scrutinized, and they were often called upon to defend their work to an increasingly divided public. "We're on the verge of something incredible," Evelyn said during one heated debate on international television. "The multiverse offers us a chance to learn from other worlds, to avoid the mistakes they've made, and build a better future for ourselves. But we have to approach it with caution and respect." "But what if it's too dangerous?" the interviewer pressed. "What if these other worlds are full of horrors we're not prepared to face?" "That's a risk we have to take," Michael interjected. "We can't turn away from the truth just because it's frightening. The multiverse is a part of our reality, and we need to understand it." Despite their efforts, the controversy only grew. The team faced increasing pressure from all sides, from governments wanting to weaponize the technology, to activists demanding its destruction. Evelyn began to feel the weight of their discovery more than ever. Chapter 10. A Final Decision. The tension reached its peak when a group of extremists, fearing that the exploration of the multiverse would bring disaster, launched an attack on the New York Institute of Quantum Mechanics. The building was heavily damaged, and several researchers were injured. The quantum gateway itself was nearly destroyed. In the aftermath, the team was forced to confront a difficult truth: their work had become too dangerous. The discovery of the multiverse had opened a Pandora's box, and now they had to decide whether to continue or to close it forever. "We've come so far," Evelyn said during a somber meeting with the Institute's board. "But if we continue, we risk tearing our world apart." "It's not just about us anymore," Lee added. "The entire world is watching, and we can't ignore the consequences." Michael, usually the most optimistic of the group, was uncharacteristically silent. He knew that they were at a crossroads, and that whatever decision they made would have far-reaching implications. After much deliberation, the team made their choice. They would continue their research, but under much stricter conditions. The quantum gateway would be moved to a secure, undisclosed location, and access would be limited to a select group of trusted scientists. They would also increase their efforts to educate the public about the potential and dangers of the multiverse, hoping to foster a more informed and balanced discussion. It was a difficult decision, but one they believed was necessary. The multiverse was too important to abandon, but they had to proceed with caution, aware of the immense responsibility that came with their discovery. As the team prepared to move their operations, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a sense of both relief and resolve. They had survived the darkness, both literal and metaphorical, and had emerged stronger for it. But she knew that their journey was far from over. The multiverse still held countless mysteries, and they had only just begun to scratch the surface. With renewed determination, she looked to the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.